Hello and welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm your host, Christina Smith, and I am here today with our guest, Jen Mons. And Jen Mons is a mentor for healers, coaches, and conscious feminine leaders. She's got a program that I just want her to highlight because it is really important to look at these different areas of our life. And so she has the 5-element wealth system, meaning wealth, WELLTH. And she is going to share with us today how we can create a legacy and prosperity. Well, welcome, Jen, to the show, the Inviting Shift Show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And so tell us a little bit about your shift, because I'm sure most coaches that come on, they have had this huge shift because of something that they've been through. So I'm sure that what you teach to the women in your groups and in your life is related to your story. So tell us a little bit more about you, Jen.
Yeah, for sure. So just about me, I guess I'll just start with my college experience, and that'll just give you some insight to the women I work with and the personality that I've embodied my whole life, which is that of a recovering overachiever and perfectionist and people pleaser type of person. But I ended up attending a U.S. service academy, so one of the 5 military service academies, really for financial reasons, but also because I'm an overachiever, and why not? Like, I'm going to go to a school where they're going to recruit the best. And so at that school, again, I graduated with the only 2 degrees that you could get from that school, overachiever again. And it was the Merchant Marine Academy. And so when I graduated, I had 2 Coast Guard licenses to be an engineer and also a captain. And then I was in the reserves for the Navy, and I had 2 degrees, one which was engineering and one which was nautical science and marine transportation. And so after that, I went to work corporate, and I was a reservist and worked corporate for just a little over 7 years. And while I was at school, I met my husband, and we were married in 2003. In 2006, still working corporate, I came upon my rebirth, my life-changing experience, which was a near-death experience with the birth of my first daughter. So here I am, continuing to overwork and overachieve, trying to prove myself, trying to hustle in a very male-dominated environment. And the one thing that I could do as a woman, give birth, because I had this kind of motto, like, I can do everything men can do and have babies. And then when that time came, it did not go as planned. And so it was a true invitation of surrender. It was a total rebirth. I had pregnancy-induced liver failure, which is something called HELLP syndrome. And even though I was a very seemingly healthy person, competitively swam, took care of my nutrition, this health crisis was really stress related. And so from that point on, in 2006, I ended up taking a year off from the company I worked with at the time, and ended up going back to that job, but not for very long. And this experience really changed my life. It was, literally a near-death experience will radically alter your course. And so for someone who valued health, I completely lost my health. If you can imagine, if you know anything about the physical body, the liver is the mother organ of your metabolism, your digestion, your immunities, your neurotransmitters. There's so much happening with the liver that when your liver isn't functioning optimally, it affects a lot. And so I was in the hospital for a month. My daughter was in the hospital for a month, and that really set me on a journey to prioritize my health even more and get my health back. And that was the beginning of the first shift into, really just learning and understanding about health and wellness. The thing that changed for me, though, really was becoming a mother and that my daughter was also really struggling with many health issues. When you are a mother and you have lack of sleep and you have lack of, energy, you are really, when you're in survival mode, you really have to align to what it is that you need in order to move forward. And so what I discovered a couple of years later is that integrative wellness was really the path for me. And so it was at that time, I had been told not to have any more children, but I decided that I knew that I could, and it was going to look differently. And I changed all of my habits. I changed all of my behaviors. I reduced stress. I began to really focus on, what I was eating. And even though my first daughter, was still struggling with a lot of health issues, what I was gathering and learning at the time was that really what we had available to us in the traditional medical system wasn't really helping her or me. We were really in survival mode. And so we began to start the path of integrative health and nutrition. And it went to IIN. I know you did too, in 2010. Studied functional medicine, nutrition, studied detoxification, and studied herbal wellness. And then from there, I started my health coaching business. And what I discovered over the years, about, I guess, maybe 5 years after I started my health coaching business in 2014, is that I had a second health crisis. So here's the theme again. So I had learned that we could heal with whole foods. Like I had done it in my family. My oldest daughter was on 6 prescription drugs at the age of 3. We completely removed her from prescription drugs, got her well through herbs and energy medicine and nutrition, just finding the right diet that worked for us. And then I had this second health crisis, but the pattern was still the overworking. So I started to see, and my clients were reflecting back to me, that, just because you eat healthy, that doesn't mean that you're going to completely be healthy. There were other aspects to well-being. And there was a voice in my head. It was the same voice just the next day after my daughter was born, when I was having an out-of-body experience. I could hear the voice very clairaudiently. The day after my daughter was born, the voice said to me, this isn't about you. Like, go down and see your daughter. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just go down there. And that same voice at this point in time in 2014 said to me, you can eat as healthy as you want, but if you don't heal your spirit or your connection to grace, then it doesn't matter. And so that was my second shift, where I then began shifting into like the embodiment of well-being. And I started to realize that health was more than just nutrition, but it was, I did a homeschool travel year with my kids, literally like when I do shifts, I do big shifts, and, spent 30 days in Nicaragua doing yoga teacher training, became an energy practitioner, studied at the Center of Conscious Ascension through divine healing. And so I began to shift the physical part of health into the more spiritual, energetic, mental, and an emotional part of health. I did some leadership and facilitation training for retreats. I did shaman training, which I didn't complete. I did shadow work training, and just started to really open up my capacity to gather tools to understand well-being on a multi-dimensional and multi kind of functional being level. And so it's just continued to expand ever since then through breathwork facilitation and meditation teachings and yoga and movement and energy work. And that is kind of how I got here, was really a breakdown in health 2 times.
I hear that, because I had a major shift when I started getting really sick in my 30s. It wasn't exactly a near-death experience like yours was, but I became a health coach because of that. And I wanted to figure out, because none of the doctors could figure out what was wrong with me. They just kept giving me antidepressant pills. They'd just try a new pill every time, and none of it was working. And the things that even if they did work, they usually had side effects and I just couldn't handle it. And so I went also to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, figuring I'm going to figure out what's wrong with me. And I did have a huge shift in food. And did it change my body? Somewhat, but I still had the gut problems that I had. And that's when I started realizing that health is not about what we're feeding ourselves, right? It is important. I don't want to I don't want to disregard it, because it is really important, and it's really how I was living my life. And I was also an overachiever and trying to get everything perfect, working the late hours so that, I could really show that I'm doing my work and being successful and doing my best. And even when I slowed that down, I still had this background mental messages going that I had to be faster, I had to get more done, I had to be more productive, be more efficient. And it was just like this constant stress. And I think that I always call it like it's static in the back of my head, right? Because we don't really hear that. It's just like an energy of trying to like shove us through and and it kept me in so much stress that that's when I started having to realize, like, what is going on? Like, it's not about the food anymore. I can eat as cleanly as I want, and I'm still getting sick. And it really came down to me slowing down and starting to tune in to what was actually happening and being more intuitive about my health, which I think is really what brought me to write the book Inviting Shift, so that I could really see on paper, like, what are the different stages of shift and how do we go through them in the same way that you came up with the 5-element wealth system. So tell us a little bit about that, because this is the culmination of your journey, right? Is like figuring out all of these pieces that you need in order to be truly, truly healthy and connected to yourself.
Yeah. And what I would say before I share this to the listener and to everybody in these 5 elements of wealth, and wealth is WELLTH, is that I'm going to share the stages of my journey, but I've witnessed over the 12 years of coaching that women start at whatever stage that they're at. And before I share the 5 elements of wealth, what I notice is there's 3 primary areas that we experience a breakdown. It's either in health, marriage, or finances. Those are the top 3 that I see. Now, of course, there's others, but and marriage could just be, we could just say relationships, but it's either money, health, or relationships. And so, of course, you and I share the story of the health for whatever reason. That was just part of our journey. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is physical, which I call body wisdom. So you talk about physical and intuitively eating. That's exactly what it is. It's allowing the consciousness of and the wisdom of the body to speak to us. So there's no one size fits all for the way that you eat or the way that you move, but really tuning into, like, what is my body telling me? Because in the work that we do, we probably notice, what I see is there's either you get injured or you get sick when you're out of alignment. And those are just kind of 2 clear ways that, we can see that. And then, of course, there's like long-term chronic illness and dis-ease, which really what that is to me. And of course, I'm not a doctor. I always have to say that, but that's really just misalignment as well, because we've been misaligned for a long time and really just not listening. And so there's chronic inflammation that is really bringing up stuff for us. So body wisdom is physical health. It's nourishing to what your body needs and at what age and stage of life that you're in, because that changes as well. I'm 45 years old now. So the way that I eat and the way that I move and where I'm at, because I'm perimenopause, probably something like that, is different than it was 10 years ago. So it's really important to move and to eat in the way that is right for you in this moment. And that's where the intuition comes in, which I call body wisdom. The second piece is, of course, the mindset, the mental piece, the mindset. And that's really getting clear on noticing, just first of all, the words that you use in your language, and really bringing your awareness and intention to who you're becoming not who you've been. So there's always going to be old stories in your head, and you get to choose how you respond to the beliefs around that story. So that's response is different than reacting. But we all come to this earth with family patterns, karmic patterns that were, generational things that we've learned that we're here to break, that we get to choose to break. And so the mindset piece begins with, again, that idea that your thoughts become your beliefs, become your words, become your thoughts, becomes your beliefs, becomes your actions, becomes your life story. So starting with being in integrity with your words and aligning to and making choices based on your value system, super important. You should know what your top 5 values are. And if there's an opportunity that comes or a relationship that comes into your life that's not aligned with your values, then it's a no. If it is aligned with your values, then how do I take that next step forward? The biggest part about the mindset piece, I believe, is just starting with the simple shifting your words and shifting that mindset. For an example, because one of the 5 elements is around financial freedom. Here's a really good example of how I help people shift their mindset when they come to me. And they say to me, well, I can't afford that, or I don't have the money for that. So the way we shift that is, how can I allow myself to receive or to be resourceful to allow that to come in so that I can pay for it? Because there is a limitless amount of financial resources in the world. You get to choose what you tap into. You get to choose how you're paid. You get to choose what you do for work. And so just shifting from scarcity and lack into trust is probably one of the biggest ones. The third element to wealth is the emotional component. I used to call this emotional empowerment, and now I call it emotional freedom, because emotional empowerment is really the willingness to do the dirty work, the willingness to go into the resistance, not to avoid it. Resistance is the way we have to feel to heal. We all know that. But also, it's that idea of what I shared is leading with your gifts and not your wounds. And so we all have core wounds, I like to call them: fear of rejection, fear of betrayal, fear of abandonment. We all have needs: the need to be loved, the need to be safe, the need to be valued. We have all these. And eventually when we do the work, what we realize is the thing that we're missing, or we think we're missing, that is creating, quote, suffering for us, is actually the thing that we already are. We're just not choosing to see that within us. And so underneath the thing that we've been resisting is where the gift is. And you have to be willing. You have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to, people call it the dark night of the soul. You have to be willing to really embrace and be friends with the parts of you that you've been resisting or hiding, because that's who you are. And as long as you reject it, then you're not whole. But the emotional freedom piece is when you're no longer attached to the outcome. And so I really shifted into that energy of just acknowledging and embracing, sort of like that inner critic or the saboteur, whatever the word is you want to use, but energetically not allowing it to have control over you anymore. So I notice that I have a fear of rejection around this, because that's my primary one. And just kind of noticing it and just kind of witnessing it without attachment versus going into the story. So we have the physical, which is body wisdom, the mental, which is our mindset. The third is emotional, which I call emotional freedom. The fourth is spiritual. Of course, I believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. I've had an out-of-body experience, so it'd be pretty hard to convince me otherwise. But our purpose is just to be who we are. I believe that we're divinely created as expressions of grace, God, source, divine energy, whatever that word is for each of us. And that's really all that we're here to be. And we get to choose what that looks like. And it is very liberating to choose from a place of joy, because the things that light you up, the things that you value, the things that are easy for you, the things that you love to do, those are the things that you're meant to do. And for us overachievers and perfectionists, for some reason, maybe we had a belief that we had to work hard to earn something or whatever that is.
Or we had to perfect those things that weren't quite perfect, right? Like we work, I think, as at least for me as a recovering perfectionist, my focus was always like, what am I doing the worst at? And let me focus on that and bring that up rather than like what you're saying is, let me look at my gifts. Let me like indulge myself in my gifts and see if those gifts can override some of these other weaknesses or flaws that I might have. And really depending on my strength rather than always staring at what might not be enough.
For sure. And just asking yourself, like, what lights me up? What brings me joy? What's easeful for me? What do I really enjoy? Because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, like, do you really want to be, doing the things you don't want, or do you want to be doing the things you do want? No matter, who cares what society says? It's whatever you want to do. And then that moves us into the fifth element, which is financial freedom. And I really believe that we are collectively in a paradigm shift into a more feminine approach to abundance, prosperity, and financial freedom, where the world is asking us to amplify our voice and values in the world. And we can do that when we're resourced. Resourced is my word for 2023. In a way, one way that all of the 5 elements of wealth resource us: food, emotional connection, a healthy mindset, spiritual growth, and financial resources help to give us that energy so that then we can continue to do our thing in the world. And it doesn't matter if it's writing a book or volunteering for your kids' PTA at school or volunteer coaching their team. It's really like, how do I want to show up in life, and what am I doing to nourish myself in all of these areas so that I am fully embodied, I am well resourced, I am well nourished, so that I can just show up as, the light that I am, the best version that I am. And it doesn't have to look like yours. It doesn't have to look like mine. We're all given a different set of gifts, a different set of intentions and goals and ideas. And the world needs all of those. But I've become really passionate specifically about supporting women and moving into the idea of becoming embodied feminine CEOs, feminine leadership, by this idea that it's really important for us to be resourced so that we can be in the energy of prosperity, which is that energy of giving and receiving. Because a lot of women over the years, including the former version of myself, have been over giving and overdoing and in overwhelm and misaligned and busy. And so the new energy that we're moving into is a place of ease and joy and freedom, and allowing ourselves to receive and be resourced so that we can easily continue to just share our gift and message out into the world, where in whatever community we are in, from a place of joy and ease.
I love this. And I love how you say, so that you could be in a space of receiving, which I think is something that can be really challenging for women. Like, I know even receiving compliments for some women is like a lot. And if we can't receive those compliments, we're going to have a hard time receiving financial abundance or freedom or any other thing, right? So we have to start, if you're going to start with something, maybe you just start by accepting that compliment and going, thank you, I hear that and I feel that, and just let it in rather than denying it. Because I think that's a big piece of us not receiving, is women are not used to receiving. And so if we want to have this financial freedom, which I truly believe this, and I love this, that you teach this, that women have a different energy about them kind of when they go after financial freedom. And that doesn't have to be, well, that's not how the patriarchy does it, or that's not how it's always been done. This is like us giving ourselves permission, right, to receive. And so I think that that's a really, really important part that you just talked about. So what element of feminine leadership makes the biggest difference for you?
Well, I would say that all of them are equally important. depending on where the individual is in their life, it's the thing that's speaking the loudest to you. If it's your health, go to the physical, mental, emotional piece. If you're feeling unfulfilled, go to the spiritual piece. If you're feeling overwhelmed and overworked and underappreciated, go to the financial piece. And so my journey took me through all of these. And the fifth element for me that I entered was about in 2020 was the financial freedom piece, which I actually came to because of a huge loss, like not the health crisis, but I ended up going into a business partnership with a woman that I thought was my best friend. And, really it was painful. It felt like rejection and betrayal, and I lost everything. And I had to get super clear on, do I really want to continue doing this? And I'd been offered another job for $100,000 to work for somebody else. And it didn't feel good. I was like, no, I have something to learn from this. And the funny thing is my word of the year for 2020 was prosperity. And that was the year that I lost like $150,000 in my business. Like I had net like negative 10. And so, however, from that, I created the prosperity course. So where I am right now is the question was, what is most important to me is that financial freedom piece. And that's where I created the prosperity course. And I've become really passionate about it. There's a couple things that are really hard for people to talk about, and food, sex, politics, religion, and money. And I've already been talking about food, and I haven't really talked about sex that much, but I will. And religion and spirituality, politics, not my favorite, but with the right people, I will. But money isn't something I ever wanted to talk about. I'm not a money coach, but all of my clients were like tripling, they were bringing in so much more income because of the inner work that they were doing. And I started to notice this, just this thing that was happening. And not only that, but my clients were doing really, really awesome things. They started to host retreats. They started to host women's circles. I had a woman who's retired from a 20-year career in the military and started to create retreats specifically for veterans. And just, all these women have these gifts, and then they give back into the world in the ways that they're passionate about. I'm able to sponsor locally some of organizations that I love and the things that I'm passionate about, which of course is all about empowering women, and host free retreats and do things. So I know, and I believe in my heart that when we are resourced financially, I believe that money makes you more of who you are. I see it all the time. And we create more opportunity. We nourish, we give more, we nurture, because that is a feminine energy. We create more. And it's time for us to really own that we're ready to do this, because money's an energy, and it's going to amplify the things that we value into the world. It's going to amplify our values. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like I'm one of the things I'm super passionate about is supporting underprivileged women for prenatal care, because HELP syndrome, women die from that. And had I not had access to amazing medical care, I would have been one of those statistics. And I know that there are women in the world who do die from this because they're not educated. They don't have the resources. So it's really important to get clear on your bigger why, because if it's all about you, it's not going to amplify further than you anyway. So when you start to amplify like why you want to continue to help people, then that just continues to create a ripple effect out into the world. Just like, taking care of yourself and eating well and moving well and raising conscious humans as children. And I would say that's probably my biggest contribution to the world as a mother. Is it's very fulfilling to know that everything that I teach women and guide them through, my children have embodied already and are embodying it without me teaching them. That's just kind of like okay, you're actually really doing and embodying the thing that you say you're doing, which feels really good. So to answer your question, prosperity is the word that I use. It's really that energy of giving and receiving. And that's really the element that provides space and resources for feminine leadership, for us to be able to create things. Because when we're resourced, we can create opportunities, we can create events, programs, retreats, nonprofits. These are the things that
Yeah, we
women
can
are doing.
give back to the charities that are already out there that are doing really great things, that we can be supportive in things that, you used the word values before, in things that we really value. And how is that we can do more? And so many of us are like, oh, we can't change the climate. We can't change this. We can't change this. But if we had enough people who were able to really call in resources, right? Because I think that just the fact that there's a taboo on talking about money, kind of, it makes it feel like something shameful, like something like wanting to have more abundance so that you can, even if it is so that you can do really great things in the world with it. I think that we hesitate on that, and in ways that the masculine doesn't always tend to hold back, right? Like the masculine's willing to take whatever resources they have and hoard them up. And I think sometimes the feminine energy wants to be more flowy with it, but there is a need in this world that if we do want to make changes, we do have to resource ourselves. And so money just happens to be that barter. This podcast is supported by Christina Smith Coaching as a service to get you to have more confidence and self-love. One way we do that is by bringing what we learn into our bodies, by lighting up our senses. Some people call these types of exercises rituals. I think they're really alignments. Something we do each day to align with what we truly want rather than getting stuck in the default of trying to outrun what we don't. I bet you could use a little self-love ritual today, and there's a short quiz or survey to pick the best one for you. You can go to the link in the description to take the free quiz to get the self-love alignment that is right for you right now. You'll also get a download of 5 self-love rituals so you can switch it up and try one each day. Our little thank you for tuning into our podcast and into your own heart. Thing, right? I mean, that's what the money is for bartering better services or being able to give back. And so that's really, really important. And what I love about this is that you have, you talk about energy management over time management. So, and I love this because I have clients sometimes that are like, I need some time management. It's like, you don't need time management. You need a realistic look at your life.
Yeah.
So what's the difference for you between energy management and time management?
Yeah. Well, I really love that you asked that question, because to me, that's where everything starts. In fact, it's really just inviting people to really own, just like I believe we are the source of our energy. So that means we're the source of our money and we're the source of our time, because we get to choose what we do with our time. And I've noticed my ability with this concept kind of called time bending, which is where we really get to notice that like 5 minutes can seem like a really long time, or it can seem like a really short time, just based on what we choose to perceive about the experience. So that's where we become the source of our time. So first, taking ownership of just being the source of our relationship to time. And every program that I start women through, the very first thing we do is we create sacred space through energy management. Because we all have the same 24 hours in the day, 365 days in the year, sometimes 366. Like, time is a measurement that we created, and it's like we get to choose what we do with it. We really, really do. And so that's when people say, I don't have time, I'm too busy, what they're really saying is that it's not a priority for me. And I removed the word busy, just like I removed the word expensive from my vocabulary a couple of years ago, because busy really just means misaligned. So energy management is choosing, again, coming down to those core values. Like, what are my values in life? And asking yourself, is this aligned with me and my values? Is it the right time to do it? So energy management isn't about, do I have the time, but is it in the right cycle of life? Is it today, this month, this year? So it's that feminine approach of being more in tune with the cycles of life. And that's a whole nother conversation. But is this in alignment with me? is it the right time? And then the third question that I always ask myself is, does it have to be me? Like, do I have to do this? Or moving into my word of the year, resourced, can it be somebody else? And, whether you're going to enter a coaching relationship or a romantic relationship, you could ask these questions to yourself. And just the reminder that your aligned yes is just as important as your sacred no. And I feel like the sacred no is that is where the energy management really comes from. So just as much as we allow ourselves to be resourced by receiving, we also want to have really healthy boundaries and create this sacred space around our values of like, what is this really in alignment with me and how I want to show up? Is this alignment with my soul? Is this a reflection of how I want to show up in my life? Is this supporting me? Is this, and doing a little check and making sure that it's coming from a healthy place, because sometimes the interesting thing is that we can feel a reaction. There's a reaction versus a response, right? And we just want to make sure that we're saying, if we say yes to an aligned action, that it's coming from our healthy self and not our survivor self. And that's how we're able to lead our life from our gifts and not our wounds. So in other words, there's no attachment. We're not seeking to be validated. We're just unattached. And it's in alignment with our values. And this is a choice that we make every day. And energy management starts with those 5 elements of wealth. Nourish yourself. Take 5 minutes a day to journal, breathe, reflect, meditate, whatever. Move every day, whether it's walking your dog, walking the beach, exercising, doing yoga. It doesn't matter how much time you spend doing it. Your body's going to let you know. Stay connected with loved ones to, really build that emotional muscle, that emotional freedom. Create affirmations and notice your daily gratitudes for that healthy mindset. Commit to your spiritual growth and commit to your financial growth, taking up more space in the world, in your gifts, and allowing yourself to be supported in doing that. So energy management is the 5 element wealth. And it's also, again, just your sacred no, your aligned yes, and not being available for the energy of procrastination and indecision and avoidance, because those are sabotaging behaviors. And if you want to stay where you are, then, spend as much time as you want making a decision. But if you just work that muscle of your intuition, which intuition and prosperity, I talk about prosperity, that's embodied trust. It's all about trust. Once you really develop that muscle of trust, then things become more clear and they get easier. And you don't spin in cycles of indecision and procrastination and people pleasing, because those are all very sabotaging behaviors. And you learn to trust your intuition, because most of the time you know the answer right away anyways. You just go into your story about why it won't work.
Oh, yeah. I have a great story around this too, just so people can actually see it. So many years ago, I was on a board for a nonprofit that I really believed in. They help women. It was a beautiful place. I was even impressed that I was on the board. Like, I was with all these leadership women. And my board position had the heaviest load. And so for 3 years, I just kept trying to keep up with it while I was doing my job and doing other things and building my own business. And I would get to the point every month where I would be in tears because it was so much extra work and I didn't have the space, but I wouldn't let it go, mainly because I was afraid, if I leave, who's going to do it, right? And that's what I kept staying, because if I leave, who's going to do it? Until one day, the tension, the stress and everything got to be too much. And I was like, that's it. I have to take time off. I have to go take care of myself. Well, don't you know that within months they had like 3 women take over the position, and they did really lovely things that I would have never, ever, ever had the time to do, which helped the nonprofit stay really online and do all these things online that they never got to do online. Like, it was amazing, the amount of stuff and all that. Like, that might have even happened sooner if I would have just been more into energy management rather than time management, and that other piece of, I told them I would, so I have to, or I should because I can, and maybe there's not anybody else, right? So all of these reasons that I talked myself into it, but what you're saying, but like from your point of view, I wasn't really listening to my own self. My own self was the one that was crying every month, going, "This has to change. I can't do this every month." And that's the self that I kept denying, right? That would come up and I'd like bop it down and go, no, 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 it's going to be fine. I have to do this. I have to do this. So really, and the same thing happened when I left my corporate job. I cried on the way to work every year, every day for like a year. It took me a year to go, there's something wrong with this. I don't think I should be crying on the way to work. And this is like these things, these uncomfortable emotions that come up, these tears that come up, this inner conflict that comes up that we're always fighting with ourselves. That's where I would suggest maybe people want to start looking, is like, where is my energy out of alignment, like you said, right? If I have values or intentions and I'm doing this thing that's out of alignment with what it is that I really want. Like if I say I want a stress-free life, staying in that nonprofit position was not helping me get a stress-free life. And so it's really being honest with ourselves that, yes, I know that I want to do this thing. And I also know that this is not healthy. And I think you and I have probably, from all of our health problems, we have probably gotten to a point where we can actually start making choices before we hit that rock bottom. And I think that that's what's really, really essential to me, because this year, my words are sacred body. I want to remind myself that like this is a temple I need to take care of, because my physical health could be better. However, I'm not waiting until I'm really, really sick anymore to do that, because that takes so much more energy to heal than if you just stop and then you start becoming more intuitive. But what I'm hearing from this 5-element wealth system, it's really about becoming in tune and connected to all the different parts of ourselves so that we can really start, whether it's financial, emotional, mental, we can start being more intuitive about who we are. We're going to stop ourselves from being that robot that's just performing and perfecting, and coming back to ourselves and going, but what's really important to me? What's really, going to move me forward? What's going to be healthy for me? And that's, what I love about this is that it hits all of those things in addition to the financial resource. Like, because I don't think that we always think that should be one of our 5 elements of wealth. But if we have financial freedom, it also means that we can go see the good doctors, right? Like, instead of just the ones that want to hand out pills, we can seek out things that are actually going to build our health rather than tear us down.
Yeah, it gives us choice.
Yes.
Financial availability gives us choice. And, back in 2009, when we were going through this major health, whatever, upgrade, I like to call it, soul upgrade. I can remember looking at our tax return and $35,000 we spent on integrated wellness that was not covered by our insurance.
Right.
And, I chose to be resourceful. That money wasn't available. At the time, we had to find ways to make it work. And if anybody were to ask me, would I do it again? Absolutely. Like, there's no price for transformation. There's no value. There's no price. Like, you can't put a value on it. So that's why I love the financial piece. And it's not a number. It's a state of being. And so at what you shared in the 5 elements, it's all about just our presence, our connection, and our state of being. And that allows us to tap into how is my physical health? How am I doing emotionally? Like what are my thoughts? Like just checking in, like, how am I feeling? And what do I need? What am I willing to take just the next little step, like drinking water? Like
Mm.
you and I both drank water before we began. Like, just what's that next small step that I can take into who I want to become? Not who I've been or where I've been, but who I want to continue becoming. And just letting go of the attachment of the results, like I want to lose 10 pounds. No, that's very limiting. That's a very limiting mindset. It's more about like setting the intention for possibility. It's really funny when I was going through my financial piece for, I used to create like income goals. And for 2 years in a row, I exactly met my income goal. I was like, like I'm not even going to set goal anymore. And I'm just going to, and when I set intentions, and I do kind of set goals, but they're this or more.
Mm.
There's no like finite number anymore. And then, the expansion really begins. So I just feel like when we put very specific goals on things, that we might be limiting ourselves. And so just stepping into that energy of trust. And, one of the things I'll kind of wrap it up with all of this that I love to say is just relax into the truth of who you are. Like just relax
Right.
into the truth of who you are and listen to your body. Notice how you feel. Notice what lights you up. Allow yourself to receive and be resourced. You mentioned the compliments. That was one of the things I started with many, many years ago, is thank you. I'm receiving that. And really letting myself feel how good it feels. Words of affirmations, my fourth love language. So I was like, that's nice. But now I'm like, no, like, yeah, I am awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just feeling it.
Yes, I just got a new coach and they made me go to my past clients and ask them, what is it that makes me a great coach? And I got all these really lovely responses. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a little ritual later to like actually take all that in and really let it kind of settle within me, because I don't think that we hear enough compliments. I mean, especially because if we're one of those people who shut them down, people stop giving them to us because they're like, they're not really open to receiving. But when we actually receive, I think it creates even more space to receive more. So
And it's
at
all
least
energy.
it tells the universe like we're open to receiving. If we start
Yeah.
receiving, it kind of signals to the universe that yes, I am actually open and ready for this. So beautiful. And I know that you have something to share with us that I'm going to put the link around here somewhere. I'm wondering, did you still have something to share?
Yeah. I have the Prosperity
There
Roadmap
you go. Yeah.
ebook
Hmm.
available, which really helps to create the framework for bringing in health, wealth, and love. I notice that sometimes the women come into the prosperity course, and although it's primarily focused on the energy and frequency of financial freedom, it's also very much related to the energy of receiving love and nourishment. And so I've had women literally find their soulmates in the program, and buy new houses and get raises and all kinds of things. So the roadmap ebook, it kind of breaks down the 5-element wealth. It dives into the blocks that you have around receiving,
Mm.
and also your potential money saboteurs, and gives you space to rewrite your origin story around that, because abundance and prosperity, again, are really a state of being and of feeling fulfilled, and from that place allowing things to just continue to flow into your
Mhm.
life, so that you can then plant new seeds out in the world.
Beautiful. So we're looking at energy management over that time management and how we can receive with that energy management. I love that so much. Energy management. I don't think I've ever used those words together before, but that is really beautiful. I think it talks to what we both work on with women and other people, humans, beautiful humans in the world, is to start looking at how how are we managing what's most important, I think, which is how we are showing up and our energy rather than how many things can I get done in a day, which I'm sure is something that Jen and I have asked ourselves many, many times, being overachievers and whatnot. And hopefully we don't ask ourselves that too much anymore. Well, thank you, Jen, so much for being on the podcast with us and sharing this with us. I think that these different areas are something that we can all look at, and how we are managing our energy around each of these, and where are we really showing up in alignment for ourselves in each of these areas. So thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Hey, one more thing. When we are all more confident and full of self-love, we can act more intentionally and mindfully. What would a world like that look like? I want to know. One way that you can help me with this vision is to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps more than you know, and it's just a few clicks to help me create a more beautiful world. And as always, remember to be gentle with your humanness.